So let's try to do an introduction to Rashash. So my framing is going to be that in Sefer Shalom, page 30, conclusion of many questions that were sent to him by the Chachmei Rav, who were very, very big Talmidei Chachamim living in Tunis. And they said, Shalom Sharabi, we have lots of questions for you. What's even going on? And we've read your work, Nahar Shalom, we've read your introduction, Rechovot HaNahar, and we've got questions for you. So this is a pretty good way to see what someone's all about, because you ask, what were the people who were learned in their time? How did they interact with them, and how did they interact with them back? So on page 32, he says, look, you sent me these questions, important questions about important topics. I'm very happy to have them from you, very important people. He's like, look, it's hard to talk about such holy things. However, when it comes to learning, calls Limud Eitz Chaim, that's the work, the Arizal, I'm not sure if we're on the same page. It goes to Havanat Tivara, understanding. So he says, look, I've already sent you this kuntras, which explains Birkot HaShachar, where I've arranged my kavanot. This is one of the things that the Rashash is most famous for. About Nahar Shalom, same book, Nahar Shalom. Also the kuntras, Matchilat HaHakdama HaSidur, Hanizkarni Rechovot HaNahar. So the Rechovot HaNahar, in a certain sense, is the introduction to the book Nahar Shalom. But here he says, look, that has a separate name. It is a book in of itself. It makes you think very similar to Imre Bina has a Hakdama, and the Hakdama to Imre Bina is a sefer in of itself. As in they said, Rabbi Rashash would only learn books, the Hakdama of a book, if the sefer was a sefer in of itself. As example was, the Hakdama to Imre Bina. So similarly here, Nahar Shalom has a Hakdama called Rechovot HaNahar, which is a sefer in of itself. He says, look, in this thing, I've explained what I've come up with, my new things. And I think it explains everything. If you take a look in it, you look at it very closely, really go through it once or twice, the hashkafat tuva, very careful, give it a good look. Kara'ui, v'chanafon. I didn't just write this thing for nothing. I put everything into it. Now, the next part, in many ways, is one of the most famous things Rashash ever said about himself. It says, up in heaven and heavens above heaven, I'd say in English. I want to have a edut to testify about me, my method, my study. Ki kol hakatuv sham, everything I put in my books now. Shalom, Nohar, kulam divrei Elohim chaim, hamurim mipi ha'arizal le marchu zal, to the Moreno, Rav Chaim Vital. The Ein Od Milvado. He says, look, everything that I say was said, not just by the Arizal, but by the Arizal to Rav Chaim Vital. And how is this possible? That's a good question. But he says it. This is his whole method. And then he says, I don't even read the other students of the Arizal. Okay, because over the years, there were many people who, let's say, they were Mekubalim, or they said they were Mekubalim. And the Rashash, a lot of what he set out to do was hit reset on everything. In the sense, he said, look, if you just learn, not just the Arizal, but what the Arizal said to Rav Chaim Vital, which means the Arizal wrote things when he was in Egypt. So the Rashash is kind of saying, let's not make that the focus of our study, although, if you want to put it in historical context to understand the Arizal's intellectual development, maybe you have to. You want to only read what the Arizal said when he went to Eretz Yisrael, speaking to Rav Chaim Vital, who, somehow became like the person who is supposed to write down his Rebbe's Torah. So that's the Rashash. That's his statement of what he's all about. Look, this is like really true. Haven't all I'm doing is being based on the Arizal, based on what we said for time before. So if you take my book, and you take my book, Nahar Shalom, and you read it through, all of your questions, there are 77 questions preceding here. And these questions are all good questions. That is, the Chachmei Ma'arav, Chachmei Tunis, they were very big. And maybe if we have more like this, we can go into what their concerns were, what they were reading, what they were curious about. He says, look, in a certain sense, I put all the answers into my books. Says, look, if there's anything I didn't write in there, I hope God helps me and gives me able to give answers. And then he does continue, he does write some answers. Some of them are very interesting. But let's see how far we can get by just framing it like that.